Yeah, I'm supposed to be here talking to you as a grower. Well, I'm merely a consultant, but I'm closely involved with my clients, so that's the nearest they could get to being a real grower. Roma has alluded to the fact that we're not getting high levels of controls that we would expect from pesticides. I think that's very important that we understand that. I think the history of the alternatives, particularly the insect controls and so on we've had, has been that they traditionally have been oversold, and then growers have put them in, expected them to give very high levels of control, and they haven't, partly because the expectation was too high. They expected eradication when in fact all they could do was perhaps control. And it's very important that we understand that these sort of products we're now talking about will help to control the situation but will not eradicate it, and we will not then, if we go into it with our eyes open, we're more likely to get the result we're looking for. It was interesting looking at some work I think that FERA did on recently on control of Bemisia. They looked at a suite of different, in the lab I guess, looking at a suite of different chemicals for controlling of Bemisia, and whatever suite of chemical treatments they used, they managed to eradicate the Bemisia completely. But where they used biological controls, they only got 85% control. Now that's fine, provided we understand using Bemisia is in fact, using Bavaria, for instance, for whitefly control, it's going to control it, but it's not going to eradicate it. Yeah. And we're not going to be too disappointed. The other thing which we don't have to worry too much about with conventional pesticides is finding the right conditions. But it's much more important with the biologicals, because basically not only are we growing a crop, we're also having to grow another organism for it to be effective. And that's one of the things we don't really too sure about. We understand it now with things like Incarcia and Phytosylus, what they need and where they work and where they start to break down. But we still really don't know very much about most of these products that we're talking about today. We need a lot more work done on that. The other situation is very much, because we can't get eradication, we've got to get control. If you think you've got a problem, you need to get, I think, your biologicals in very early. Get the boot in first, don't wait. A lot of them also work, as has been alluded to, by stimulating the plant's defense mechanisms, and obviously it's much better to get the drawbridge drawn up and the portcullis dropped down before the pest arrives rather than after it's arrived. In terms of expectations, we still don't have products, I don't think, that will control the really aggressive diseases like downy mildews. Well, integrated management plan is a legal requirement, and varietal susceptibility is, I think, crucial. You're never going to control problems if you've got varieties that are extremely susceptible. When we're talking about diseases, drainage, we've got the red button, haven't we? Yeah. I think drainage is crucial. Most disease control, it seems to me, is really about engineering. If you can engineer the right sort of climate, then you're going to have a much less of a problem with the disease. And if you engineer it right, you can also then get the right environment for the organism you're trying to grow. And drainage is crucial to control things like Pythium, Phytophthora. Also, and irrigation. Are we over-irrigating? Are we under-irrigating? Organisms like MET52 have proved not to be that effective on the ornamental side because basically they require much higher temperature than people had realised, and also they need quite a high level of moisture in the compost. And if you're on perhaps a drip irrigation, you're wetting some of the compost, but you're not wetting all of the compost. So it seems likely to me that with a fungal organism where you're looking for moist conditions, overhead watering might be very good, but sub-irrigation where you've got a dry area at the top of the compost or drip irrigation, you're not going to get 100% control. These things all need to be integrated together. And air movement and spacing the crop, if you don't space the crop satisfactorily, you're not going to control any sort of disease within the foliar environment, whether it's a chemical or a biopesticide that you're using. So, not the best way to try and grow crops. Not much good for the crop in question. I know it's not an edible, but equally, these sort of conditions, if they're not much good for the crop, they're certainly no good for any sort of biopesticide you're putting into the compost. Again, it's not an edible, but again, plenty of space, plenty of air, excellent drainage. This is the sort of environment, I think, where you can start to hope to get some control using biopesticides, where you've got the fundamental growing regime as good as you can get it. Good drainage, air movement, and this is boom irrigation, applying water evenly as it's required. Well, we're supposed to have an integrated crop management plan and use these products sustainably, but it's not feasible because of their very distinct requirements to do that throughout the whole of the cropping programme. And the area where I think we have most opportunities to use these biopesticides is in propagation. Most of the ones we have at the moment require a fairly particular in that they want warm conditions, they want moisture, and they want uniform conditions. And propagation, it seems to me, is really the place where you need to be looking to put your biopesticides within your total integrated programme. The other problem we have, which is more, again, which Roma alluded to, we don't have systemic products, we don't have translaminar products. These products we're putting on organisms don't move. They stay where you put them. They don't have legs, they're not like Encarsia or Phytocylus, they don't move. You've got to do all the work. So the application is crucial, and on the whole, high volume spraying is probably the best, particularly if you're looking to try to get coverage underneath the leaf. I see people going around with knapsack sprayers, and quite frankly, I think most of the time they're wasting their time. The coverage you get from a knapsack sprayer is almost, it's pathetic, frankly. Maybe in propagation where you've got small areas and you can get some sort of coverage and you've got a small plant, a small target, it works, but on larger areas it really is a bit of a waste of time. These are the sort of targets that we're getting, I think, useful control with biopesticides at the moment, and where I'm quite happy to recommend my clients to use these within a program. And we're getting, if you've got the fundamentals right, getting good control with some of these situations. And this one at the bottom, root growth, certainly with T34, Trichoderma asperellum, I think, unless you've changed the name. Trichoderma asperellum, we're seeing very significant root stimulation, which is very interesting. Now, that's not approved at the moment on edibles, but maybe somebody will be good, and maybe no, he's not going to go there. No, later this year. Maybe later this year, maybe. I think that's root stimulation, because if you've got a plant that has no roots, you've got nothing. If you've got a plant with a healthy root system, you're a long way to controlling most of your pest and disease situations. So I think that's an extremely important aspect. Naturalis, finding it very valuable for control of whitefly, particularly sort of in propagation situations where, again, we've got during the summertime where we've got sufficiently high temperatures. But again, application is essential because things like whitefly are underneath the leaf, so how getting coverage with a high volume sprayer is essential. And again, whitefly don't move a great deal, so if you put your naturalis in the wrong place, the two aren't going to get in contact. Dipel, again, also extremely effective, particularly on leafy salads. Fits in very well with things like baby leaf, where we do tend to have quite, at certain times of the year, big caterpillar problems. In this situation, we don't need to get the product underneath the leaf. The top of the leaf is fine because the dipel is taken in by the caterpillar by ingestion. So the deposit on the top of the leaf is satisfactory, and ULV equipment like this, very efficient way of putting the product on, and obviously it fits well in terms of operator safety, being able to get into the structure, putting this stuff on automatically at night and being able to come back in the next day and start harvesting or do whatever, fits in extremely well. But wet spray is equally appropriate, but I mean, this surely has to be an area that we ought to be looking at a lot more. The boom sprayer, where in my experience growers have been using the this type of hand-operated wand, waving it around like some magician. They're using, and then they switch with a bit of investment to using a boom, getting the same level of coverage on the crop, using about 30% less water and about 30% less chemical, because a boom is so much more accurate and is much better at giving uniform coverage. To say nothing of operator safety issues. So direct saving, doesn't have to be sophisticated. This is a hand-operated boom that basically is just pushed up and down between the rows, which is a possibility for some people. Well, I mentioned T34, so it's not approved on edibles, but it is extremely effective as a root stimulant. But I think with quite a number of these root type things, if these are powders or these are spore formulations, it must be the best way to get coverage must be to mix the stuff into your compost, into your soil before planting. Putting it on after, all right, once you've planted, you've got no choice but to drench it on the top, but putting it on the top and then expecting it to evenly spread down through the soil or down through the compost really can't be as good as mixing it in at day one, either in the compost mixer or in the rotavator or what have you, because there must be some sort of natural filtering out of the concentration of the spores. So again, that requires you to think ahead and plan ahead, and if you're going to use something like T34, to get it put into your program before you start. Serenade, finding it also working extremely well where it's applied through the ULV machine. Works also very well when applied high volume. But I understand that, and I'll be corrected here by Paul if I'm wrong, the actual active ingredient, the bacillus, isn't actually doing anything when we're applying it to the leaf. It's really basically all the other things that are in the mix, in the liquid fermentation, that are basically stimulating the plant. The peptides that are stimulating the plant's own defence mechanism. Which is an interesting take on really what's on the label really, because it's about 3% bacillus in there.
Yeah, there is a direct effect on the organs.
Yeah.
Disease organs.
but it's the peptides that are basically stimulating the plant. So again, high volume or ULV, getting a good coating on the leaf seems to work particularly well. Tree stop, been using this quite a bit with herbs, applying it preventatively, particularly on things like plugs at delivery, if they're coming in from elsewhere or from a propagation department, and also at potting. Winners, you can see those are some of the things I think are winners in terms of application, etc. Losers, I got into some trouble last time for putting a cross against Contans because I said it wasn't very successful. But I've been told since then that my growers have got the wrong species of Sclerotinia, and it's very good against Sclerotinia sclerotiarum, but not very good against Sclerotinia minor. Anyway, and Met 52, I've just put on there, which is for ornamentals. So it's been a great disappointment for vine weevil control. Where did we all go wrong in thinking it would work when in fact growers have used it and it hasn't worked, and we've had to resort back entirely to nematodes. It's a salutary lesson. We've got to get it right if we're going to come out with new products. That's my wish list. Serenade to get approval as a drench. It's certainly approved in America, and I think could be very effective on some soil compost diseases. And T34 for edible crops. And finally, our trials that we're funding through HDC, etc., need to be focused on how to get the best out of biopesticides rather than so much as comparative studies alongside conventional pesticides, because we're not doing, it's not a fair comparison, and we're not even looking for the same result. With a conventional pesticide, we're looking always for control, for eradication, and here we're looking for a control mechanism, not the same thing. So we need to be rethinking what we're asking our researchers to do for us.